Well, are you ready for the series? First week of the series called Jesus Won. Are you ready for it this morning? In just a moment, I am going to tell you the origin and the current conversation around what is a t-shirt with this phrase, Jesus won. But before I do that, let's think about and let's talk about those two words. How about we say them out loud together? You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Jesus won.
You didn't say it the way I want you to say it. I know I didn't prompt you, but I was like hoping there would be just this amazing amount of faith and hope and belief in the room, and that somebody knows you have passed from death to life. Somebody know I'm not the person I used to be. I'm different today, and the only thing in between was Jesus showed up in my life. Could we try it one more time on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3.
Jesus won.
Oh, come on now, let's give him praise for that. Hallelujah. That's great. Well, I'll tell you right off the bat about the elephant in the room, and that is there was a young man that I heard about who was wearing this shirt, and as he was walking past someone who read the shirt, and then the person said out loud, "Did he?" But did he? I'm pretty sure he didn't. And this morning, I want to lean into the tension. Yes, here's the phrase. Yes, here's the shirt. But we got to answer the question, but did he? Did he? I hope as you are heading on your way home today, I hope as you get into your car, you can answer the question, did he? But not only answer the question from a universal perspective of how the pastor will say it on a Sunday morning, but that you can answer it from the most personal part of your life. The most intimate thing that no one else knows, that you could speak over that greatest trial and you could say, Jesus won. But in order to get to that place, if you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to be open, you're going to be transparent, you have to ask the question, did he? Did he? The phrase, thank you, I got an amen somewhere up in this place. Let's give it up for somebody who's listening this morning. The phrase comes from one verse of Scripture that is at the very end of what the theologians call Jesus' farewell discourse. It is a long conversation that he has with his 12 disciples, maybe some more who are part of that intimate core of believers. It is teaching, but it is conversational. It is like a general speaking to his troops before war. That kind of reminds me of what the mom does before she takes her kids to the store. You know what I'm talking about, that pep talk? We're going to walk up. Oh, I had somebody know who I'm talking about. We're going to walk into this store. You're not going to touch nothing. You're not going to ask for nothing. You're not getting nothing. Can I get an amen from some moms and dads up in this house? I got to prep you before we come into this battle zone, this war zone. Jesus is speaking to his troops. And here's the interesting thing, and I wonder if you've had a similar church experience. He is telling them things that will make sense in retrospect. Let me break that down because you gave me that look, okay? He is telling them things that will make sense later. Now, it makes sense to us now, perhaps, because we are in the future compared to where they are sitting. We're in the future compared to this setting. But to them, they didn't understand what he was saying. And so he is telling them things that they will understand later. Have you ever had a similar experience? I want to ask you the question, what are you currently going through? What are you currently going through? Did I got the right church? Are y'all going through something? Am I? What side of the room's actually going through something? I'll preach to the side of the room. Looks like y'all struggling right here. Okay, all right, I'm gonna preach to you guys right here, okay? Have you ever gone through something and you have the sense that Jesus is trying to teach you something as you go through it, but you hadn't figured it out yet? And then the spirit of what Jesus says and the spirit of this series that we're going to talk about to the end of September is, what if your future self could come back and explain what you're going through right now and what the lesson is? And if that was possible, would you walk out of this room differently? Come on, this section. Would you walk out of this section differently if your future self could explain exactly what you're going through? To make it personal, I am speaking and preaching to the Noahs in the room. I am preaching to the Julias in the room. I am speaking and preaching to the Kirk and Karens in the room. You say, what does that mean? I'm talking about Noah when you showed up at Cedarville University and you thought you had a position on the worship team that you wanted and they told you no. I am talking to the Julias who 8 years ago you felt like you got a word from God about starting a Christian school, but for 8 years you kept hearing the word no. I'm talking to the Kirks and the Karens who were ready to say, I don't know if this church thing's going to work. We can't find a building. We just keep hearing the word no. And if we could zap back into the past and go back to that Noah and go back to that Julia and go back to that Kirk, guess what we would say? Jesus won. Jesus won. Do you want me to keep going? That leads us to what this verse is. If you're taking notes, make sure you do that, but there's also an app where you can take notes, and there's an app where you can click and find a Bible reading plan. So this is not just a word that you hear. The Bible says don't be just hearers of the word, but be doers also. And so you're going to take this, you're going to take a doggy bag with you this Sunday morning. And so this could flow to every part of your life. The verse is John chapter 16, verse number 33. In salvation's history, a climatic move is coming. This verse is the end of 4 chapters. Somebody say, thank you, Pastor, for not preaching all 4 chapters. So I thought about it, but I decided just to go right to the end verse. This verse is given at the occasion of the Last Supper, which is the origin of our communion moment we just had a moment ago. After this verse, Jesus will pray what is known as the high priestly prayer. And then in the beginning of John 18, it says that they're going to cross over the brook Kidron, which is in the Kidron Valley, and they're going to head to the garden. And some of us who have been around church a lot, we already know. And if you haven't been around church, I want to tell you that what happens in the garden is crucially important. What happens that whole week is so important, we gave a name to it. It's called the Passion. It's the Passion Week. And the height of that week happens right there as they head towards that garden. Jesus is going to be betrayed, falsely accused or lied on, and then crucified. And somebody possibly walked into this place and thought you didn't have anything in common with Jesus, but then you just heard that Jesus was betrayed, lied on, and crucified. And you're like, I actually can identify with that. Can I identify with those who want me not to thrive, those who don't want me to succeed? And there are even a few theologians who believe that some of this discourse possibly could be happening on the way from the upper room where they had the Last Supper as they're traveling to this spot that John 18 talks about as they cross over the brook of the Kidron Valley. They're heading towards something possibly that will crush them. And I lean into the tension of the room, and I can't help but make the comparison. There may be someone here today that you are heading towards possibly something that is crushing you. He goes on then to speak about his impending death, his departure, and then what will be their desertion. And again, as I've already alluded, it doesn't make any sense to them. He tries to explain and use figurative language And he tells them, hey, I'm using figurative language. And then they say, oh, yeah, we understand now. And Jesus says, no, you don't. No, you don't. Do you really understand? They think they understand. But he's going to say it to them one last time in the simplest way he possibly could. He takes 4 chapters of teaching and puts it into one verse. And this is what he says. Have you been reading it while I've been talking the whole time? Good, that's fine. His words are more important than mine. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. May the Lord bless the reading of his words. Here Jesus presents 3 truths, 3 realities, that when you're on the front end of history, they may not make sense, but they are not contradictory. But they live in perfect harmony as a follower of Jesus. They are also the 3 points to my sermon this morning. Number 1 is peace. Number 2 is tribulation. And number 3 is victory. Peace. I want you to notice this, and I'm going to move quickly this morning. Peace is found in the absence of unmet expectations. I'm going to say it again, then I'll explain it in case you don't understand, and don't act like you don't understand. You understand when you don't understand, because that's what the disciples did 2,000 years ago. How do we find peace? Peace is found in the absence of unmet expectations. Well, what are the disciples' expectations at this moment? I will tell you this. It is not that he's going to go and be crucified on the cross. It is not that he's going to die. It is not that he's going to lay in that tomb, a dead man. They believe he is the prophesied Messiah, and in their interpretation of the scriptures, now they missed a lot of them, but in the ones that they cherry-picked, they saw him as a conquering king that is going to kick out the Romans, and now he's going to lead them to the zenith of the power of this nation of Israel. And because they were with him, ride or die before, that they're going to be elevated as people of authority and privilege. You were with me when I was on the bottom, now you'll be with me on the top. And because they are with him on the top, and because he's the one in charge of the most powerful nation in the world, they're going to be powerful people. This is why they have conversations like, who can sit on your left hand and who can sit on your right hand? This is why they're arguing with each other, who's the greatest among them, because the greatest among them would have the chiefest of position. They would serve chief on his staff. Their expectation is Jesus, excuse my language, is about to kick some butt. That's their expectation. Right? Kicking these people out, and we're going to be in charge now. But they missed it. They missed the part about the cross. They missed the part about a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. They missed the part about us being healed by his wounds. Their expectations are not going to be met. And unmet expectations equal no peace. Can I describe it to you in a practical level that you would understand? Have you ever wondered why your girlfriend is with a man and that man doesn't cook for her, doesn't send her roses, doesn't do all the little things that you want, and why they still have a good relationship, possibly even a better relationship than you have? It's because your girlfriend don't have expectations that he cooks, sends roses, or does the little things. I'm not saying this is a lesson on whether we should cook, send the roses, or do the little things. That would be another sermon series on you better get your act together, bro, okay? But what I'm saying is, a woman could actually thrive in a relationship that doesn't do the things the other relationships do. Why? Because she doesn't have an expectation that he do those things. Maybe she didn't see his dad do those things for her mom, so she doesn't have that expectation. But can I tell you what will kill a relationship? Can I tell you what will bring war to a relationship? Can I tell you what will bring the lack of peace to a relationship? Is when that sister has an expectation, you better do this, and you don't do it. If she saw her dad take out the trash, and now suddenly you don't take out the trash, unmet expectation. When she saw her dad fix the tire and put the new tire on, and then when you pull down, you tell her to get out, unmet expectation. When she saw her dad come around her mom and put his arm around her and give her a little kiss on the cheek and say, I love you, if you don't do that, sir, again, another sermon series, unmet expectation. And I know people who today, they divorce not because they've fallen out of love, but because their expectations have not been met. Oh, I'm preaching better than you responded, but I will take the sigh and the grunt over here from this section right here. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you being with me this morning. Unmet expectations. It's finances. It's the person who can live on nothing, and they're good, they're happy. They don't have a new car, they have a new house, they don't have a big house, they don't have a lot, but they're good. Why? Because they don't have an expectation of having a big house. They don't have an expectation of having a new car. They don't have an expectation of having the new things. But the person who has expectation will miss the nicer house than the other person's house. They'll miss the nicer car than the other person's car. Why? Because they expect something better. They expect something bigger. It causes them to be upset with their situation. They're frustrated with where they are in life. Can I give the illustration? When mom and dad did really good for themselves, and now they're 50 and 60 years old, and they got the big house and the nice car, and the child who didn't struggle at all and had a silver spoon in their mouth go out into the world, and they expect to get the nice house and the nice car, and they don't realize the struggle that mom and dad had to go through to get it, and now they have this idea that they got to have the big house and big car, and they end up broke and in debt because they're trying to live mom and lives, but they didn't see mom and dad's struggle. It's an unmet expectation. So maybe some of you parents out there need to set some expectations for your kids to help them, because they don't. You make it try to look perfect and nice, but sometimes they need to see the struggle. That this just doesn't come. It doesn't just grow on trees. And so they got to see the struggle so they get their expectations right. Last one. Let me talk about the person, and you're at the job. You work the hardest at your job. You work the hardest. You're on time. You dot your T's. Excuse me. You dot your I's. You cross your T's. You're on point. You're productive. And let one little thing slip, and they're on you. They're down your throat. When brother so-and-so hadn't come on time, and when he comes with Starbucks in his hand, meaning you could have been on time, but you chose to go to Starbucks first anyway, and you're underproductive, and you don't take care, and you're just coasting by, and you're like, how come you don't get on to him for being a slacker? Why? Because you set an expectation of excellence. And the other one hasn't. And they're not upset with the other one because they're doing exactly what they expect them to do. And you performing at an excellent level are, in their mind, underperforming, even though you're outperforming the derelict. Oh, I'm preaching today. I wish somebody would help me out. All of that is just trying to illustrate to you this idea that the disciples expected one thing, and Jesus knows that their expectations are not going to be met. So he has a conversation with them to level their expectations. Why? Because he wants them to have peace. And I know we don't know much about this in our part of the world, but there are people in other parts of the world that following Jesus does not mean a life of prosperity. It actually means a life of persecution. Moms and dads will disown you because you got baptized. Your life could be threatened. Your livelihood could be at risk in other parts of the world. On November the 3rd, we will pray for the persecuted church around the world. This was the environment that the disciples were walking in. It's not the one that we live in, and that's why we, in a more Western American ideology of Christianity, we get upset and we don't come to church when it rains. When people in the other part of the world could lose their life for being found out to be a part of a church. What's the difference? Expectations. And Jesus says, let me give you a level expectation of what it's like to follow me. And I'm giving you this expectation so that you can find some peace. Now, I don't know if you realized it or not, but I just gave you a really good secret formula to someone who is not experiencing peace. If you don't have peace in your life, you need to go level your expectations and get them rooted around what Christ has revealed. And then when you can learn to live a life in alignment to what Christ has revealed, here's what Paul says: I have learned in whatever state I am in therewith to be content. I can abound, and I can be high, and I can be low. Why? Because I have an expectation that without him I can do nothing. And so Jesus wants you to have peace. And so he gives you the right expectations. Look what he says again. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. Here's the second point. In the world, you will have tribulation. Number two, tribulation. Before we talk about the truth of tribulation, let me just define it. Here's how it is defined or rendered in most of our English versions of the Bible. Tribulation, affliction, trouble, anguish, persecution, burden, to be afflicted. It means oppressing together, pressure, oppression, affliction, tribulation, distress, or to be in straits. Here's a truth that Jesus is revealing for his disciples that we can learn from today. Number two, tribulation is this. Understand it. Peace is not the absence of trouble. We said peace is found in the absence of unmet expectations. But according to Jesus, peace is not the absence of trouble. How is this going to change how you walk out of here today? Because you thought if I could just get this trouble out of my life, then I can have peace. But Jesus says these are two railroads. These are two rails on this railroad that are live in perfect harmony. You can have peace, and in this world you will have trouble. You don't have to remove the one to get the other. I think maybe this would be a good time for me to tell you the origin of this shirt that I wear today. A couple months ago, I get a phone call from an individual, and he says, Pastor, we're looking for some chaplains who work with athletes to mentor and to shepherd some young men who God is working in their lives mightily. And so I show up. I got some pictures I'm going to show you. I show up to this sportsman's country club retreat type thing in Bellefontaine, Ohio. It's like the nicest thing I've ever been to in my life. I'm from the west side of Dayton, y'all. And so I was rolling in, and I'm like looking with the big eyes, and I'm gawking, and they've got chefs feeding us, and it is just out of my mind. It's another world. I walk in, and I know that there's some young men who play football for Ohio State University, and that they had had a spiritual awakening, and that they needed some chaplains and some pastors to kind of like mentor and try to help these young men at this 2-day retreat that they were having. I met there at this retreat this young man. His name is Cam Babb. Cam Babb has an amazing testimony of overcoming not one, not two, not three, but 4 ACL surgeries. He had 2 on each knee. And in November of 2022, C.J. Stroud threw him a pass, and he caught a touchdown pass. He's the first NCAA player in history to have 4 ACL surgeries and catch a touchdown pass. Afterwards, they interviewed him and C.J., and for 15 minutes, they talked about Jesus and the power of Jesus in their life. And so, because of people who had carried the gospel to this team, Cam had been impacted, and then he started to then impact other people. One of those people being Travion Henderson. And Travion is sharing his faith actively, and they are just on fire for God. For 2 days, we didn't talk about football, we talked about Jesus. And Travion had this vision of coming to camp this year, and all of those players who are followers of Christ openly declaring their faith in Jesus. And some of you, have anybody seen this viral image that has gone around already? That these players are openly following Jesus and letting them know life is bigger than football. Jesus has changed and transformed their life. And I want you to pray for Travion and his friends and this team, because tonight at 7 o'clock in Columbus, they're having an evangelistic crusade, and they believe God's going to save thousands of people tonight. Would you pray with them? And some of you can follow Travion or some of these players. Maybe you even want to go tonight and go, this is not just some sermon illustration. This is Jesus won and is winning and is going to win people this evening, even through the mighty power of God that is active today. And so, because I had a moment to meet these young men and be a part of their lives and encourage them and be their cheerleader, mostly on Instagram, I'm seeing these images. Well, then I show up to chapel and I realize I've been seeing this shirt other places. A couple of weeks ago when the Giants came into town, normally I do visiting chapel in the visitors' dugout. And so one of the Giants come into the dugout, and he has this shirt in Giants color, Jesus won. And I'm thinking, I've seen this shirt everywhere. What is happening? What's going on? And so I go to that player, and I'm like, man, where are you getting these shirts from? Everywhere I see them, they're everywhere, and they're always in the school colors, or they're always in the team colors. Where do I get one? And so he tells me about this story of a man for 8 years in Arizona who works with an organization called FCA, or the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And for 8 years, this man has been given shirts, these shirts, to athletes who are a part of his Bible study. They've been passing them out for 8 years in obscurity until Evan Carter, that guy's name is Matt Palmer. And I get the number of Matt Palmer from this player, and I call him, and he tells me this story. He's been passing out this shirt for 8 years. Nobody knows about it, but one of his players that he gave it to gets called to the big leagues. His name is Evan Carter. Evan Carter gets called up on the Rangers, and as you know, last year the Rangers go to the World Series. And Evan Carter's wearing this shirt while he's getting ready to play for the World Series, and it goes viral. And before you know it, there's a movement of athletes, a movement of people who are wearing this shirt that says, Jesus won. And I want you to know, we bought, by the grace of God, a very generous donor allowed us to buy 155 shirts, enough for all of the high school students at FCA at Oak Hills High School, our students at our church, and shout out to Mount St. Joe's women's soccer team. Would you raise your hands? Ladies, look at this right here. And we're about to put Jesus won on the west side, y'all. That's what I'm saying. But one of my favorite things as I was reading about Evan Carter, again, I just love this story. This is just the way God works, isn't it? Takes a faithful person who works with students who nobody knows his name, Matt Palmer. And for 8 years, he's been giving out those shirts. And then, like that, Jesus says, now's the time. He appoints and anoints the right person who will take the message further. Evan Carter, he's interviewed and he shares his faith openly. One of my favorite things, he talks about a tattoo that he has. Some of you have seen this tattoo, and it means God is greater than the highs and lows. God is greater than the highs and lows. I know what that means to an athlete, especially a ball player. It's rough, y'all. It's hard. It's hard to have everybody watch you fail. It's hard to not succeed and not perform. And some of you can translate that to your own personal life. And what he is saying is, no matter if I swing and hit a home run or if I swing and miss, God is higher. God is greater than the highs and lows of my life. Could I translate it another way? In this world, you will have tribulation. But take heart, I've overcome the world. Can we read it one more time? Can we put that up on the screen? This is the English Standard Version. I use this version because I want to give a shout out here in a second. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world, you will have tribulation. But, what's the next two words? Come on, I want to hear it a little louder over here. See, I don't know if you knew it or not. There used to be a box up here. They must have moved it. Noah has a band. The band, part of the guys who play in the band were playing for us this morning. They're going to have a big worship night in a couple weeks. It's going to be off the chain. We're almost already out of tickets. I should tell you, you better get a ticket today. But they named their band Take Heart. As far as I know, it is based off of this verse. And no, I just think it's a really beautiful story of how God takes beauty from ashes, of how you walked into a university disappointed that you didn't get what you thought God wanted you to have. And it was like Jesus was whispering, in this world you'll have tribulation. But take heart. I'm going to take you to places that those other people are never going to get to go. Because you're going to learn to find peace, to know that God is greater than the highs and the lows. Can we give God glory for that? Here's this last phrase, but I have overcome the world. Could you say that? I have overcome the world. Here's the last point. We said number one was peace, number two is tribulation, but lastly is victory. Victory. Don't check out yet, because one of the coolest things I've ever found in Bible study is coming in just a second. Victory. And here's the spiritual truth I need you to know, and I'm going to go there. It won't make sense yet, but in retrospect, you'll understand in just a moment. Here's what I need you to know. Victory is not bound by time. Victory is not bound by time. He says, take heart, be undaunted. I have overcome. I have overcome. What does he mean? Does he mean that he has been tempted of all sin, yet without sin? Yes. Does it mean that he had come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law? Yes. But it was deeper than that. Why? Because he's about to take a blow from the world. The young man who reads the shirt, Jesus 1, and says, but did he? Did he really? He's alluding to the moment that we're getting ready to walk into. The world is getting ready to take a blow at Jesus. They're getting ready to beat him, scourge him, mock him, put a crown of thorns on him, strip him naked, nail him to a cross, scourge him, mock him, pluck out his beard, the prophet says. None of his bones were broken, but he experienced excruciating pain. He thirsted, and he would die. But I want you to understand what Jesus is saying. What's beautiful about how God revealed his word to the world, he didn't do it in English. He did it in a language that is much more particular than English. and gives us meaning and sense. And so when Jesus said, I have overcome, when he said it in the language he said it, he was using a particular tense. Now, if you don't check out if this isn't your thing, but if this is your thing, you're a theology or geek like me, okay, I want you to know this is the perfect indicative active. What does it mean? The tense in which he is speaking. Obviously, we understand past tense, future tense, present tense. We got that, right? Hopefully. Come on, college girls. You go, right? Past tense. Y'all understand past tense? We put the what? The ED on the end? You got it? So he is saying here this in the language he is speaking, he is saying it in the perfect indicative active. What in the world does that mean? Let me tell you. The perfect tense describes an action that occurred in the past but has present ramifications. Its effects continue on into the present. And there is a focus on completed action and or the resultant state. Translation for the rest of us. Have you ever cooked a really good meal? Ate that meal really full, went away, came back home, and still could smell it when you got back home? You see what I'm saying? You cooked, ED, past tense, a meal, but when you came back, it still had present ramifications that even went on. I guess I'm saying Jesus was cooking. Let him cook. Jesus said, I have, past tense, but it's the perfect tense. You have to understand, they don't translate English to the language he was speaking. Past tense for us, I have overcome, but it is the perfect tense, meaning it is a past action, but it has present ramifications. Moeller calls this a prolepsis. It means a representation of things existing before it actually does or did so. How in the world can Jesus say, I have, past tense in our language, I have overcome when he's getting ready to die on the cross? When the world is getting ready to, in their mind, give him the greatest defeat. And it's in that moment, I believe, Jesus is not speaking from his human side. The hypostatic union is that he is 100% man, but he is also 100% God. I believe in that moment he is speaking as divine. He is speaking as the Lord's anointed. He is speaking as the Lord God Almighty, the Ancient of Days. And he says in that moment, I am God. I sit outside of time because I created time. And I just want to let you know, I already won. This is the Son of his Father speaking. It is already accomplished because he sits outside of time. Yes, the world is about to strike a blow. It will bite his heel, but he will crush its head. 3 days later, he will rise from the dead victorious. Glory be to God. You say, Pastor, did he? Can I give you something maybe that makes a little more sense to you if you don't understand? He did. That it's already won. This is really, really simple, but I think you'll understand it. That it's already finished. Y'all understand that it's already finished? It's already won? Some of you right now in your logical, chronological brains and analytical brains, I got some engineers in the house. Come on, help me now. You're like, how could he already won when it hadn't happened yet? Have you ever got your favorite Netflix series? You ever watch your favorite Netflix series? How many have a favorite Netflix series or Hulu series or whatever it may be? How many of you have one of those series that instead of giving you the series chronologically, progressively, and you wait for the next season or the next episode to happen, how many of you you've watched one of those series where they drop the whole season at one time? Anybody ever watched one of those? They drop the whole season at one time? You know what I'm talking about? Come on, help me out. Let's close this service out. So what is the reality of that situation? You start on episode 1, but the final episode's already finished. You're watching episode 2, but the story's already been written. You're watching episode 3, and you're freaking out on episode 3 because your favorite person dies in episode 3. But you don't know what happens in episode 4 because you haven't watched it yet. But if you keep watching, honey, guess what? He wins. he wins. It's already done. It's already been dropped. And we come, your kingdom on earth. We want to get a download every single day, every single week. We want to see this kingdom. We just want to keep pushing play. Are you still there? Yes, I'm still there. Don't you stop that thing. Let it keep playing. Why? Because we want the heaven to come down on earth. That's what we're doing. Because Jesus won. He's winning. He's winning right now, and he's already won. And here's the coolest thing I've found ever in Bible study. When Jesus says, I have overcome. I said, all right, I get the tense, right? Past tense, perfect tense. But what does the word overcome mean? This is cool. You ready? So I look it up. Okay? Nikeo. Let it marinate for a second. Nikeo. It comes from the word, here it is right here. You pronounce it a different way though. Here's the next one. You pronounce it Nike. That's your English way of saying it. Nike. Victory. The Greeks would come up with a mythology. They would come up with this figure, this God of victory. And in my mind, it's almost like Jesus is laughing in this moment, because he is saying, I am the King of Kings. I am the Lord of Lords. I am God of gods. I am God over any mythological God you could ever come with. I am the God of victory. I have Nike. I have Nike. I have victory. And then I started thinking about all these athletes wearing Jesus won on their shirts and how powerfully it's moving. And then I thought, wait a minute. There's been athletes wearing this symbol of victory. Can we put one of my friends, Jake Fraley, up on the screen? There's been athletes wearing a symbol of victory longer than this shirt ever released. You've been wearing a symbol of victory. Some of you, where am I at? Come on, help me now. Some of you got on your shoes right now in the front row. Oh, glory be to God. Y'all better help me preach this message right now. Some of you are walking into victory this morning and you didn't even know it. You've been wearing victory and you didn't even realize it. He's got a plan. He's got a way. Come on, yeah, come on now. Come on, the young man standing up in the back. Come on, look at the young man back there. Come on, look at him. He's standing up and he said, hey, I walked in here with victory. I walked in with victory. I didn't even know I had it. But I got it because he overcame. He won. No matter what I go through, God is greater than the highs and lows. And now I can walk differently. Jake, I can share this with you because everything I will say, he has said publicly. This is nothing private that he has said to me. Jake wears that sign of victory on his chest, but some of you will know him and his wife are going through the hardest trial of their life. Last off season, I don't have time to tell you the whole story, but over a series of events and falls and weird things, and their 5-year-old daughter crying out in excruciating pain, them going to doctor after doctor after doctor. And finally, after all these tests, he finally says, do a blood test on her, please. And they said, oh, she doesn't need it. He says, please do a blood test. And they get the blood test, and she realizes she has leukemia. 5-year-old Avery. And so this year, starting in spring training and throughout the year, almost every single week, we've prayed for Avery. My wife ministers to the wives and fiancés and girlfriends, and she can tell you the battle that Angelica and Jake face. It's tough to watch people battle through cancer. It's really tough to watch a 5-year-old lose her hair. There's one chapel, and again, Jake has said this publicly on some podcasts. I would invite you to go listen to every podcast Jake ever speaks on. Jake talked about being really scared, and there was a time, some of you, if you are baseball heads, you know he took time off for a family emergency. He went down to Florida to be with his family. Avery was getting on a new type of chemo, and the nickname, it's kind of one of those infamous things. The nickname of it, this little pill, is called the Red Devil. The Red Devil. They call it the Red Devil because it's really strong. It actually is a little red pill. And part of this chemo, yes, it goes to kill the cancer, but it also attacks the heart. And so it's just very, very dangerous to be on this particular type of chemo. And what made Avery's situation even more difficult is she had an underlying heart condition. I don't know the names of it. Again, go listen to Jake say it from his own lips. But he talks about how her valve, part of her valve was closed, part of her, the ventrioles, whatever it's called, the vents are closed in her heart, and so it made it that the more dangerous. And so they're getting ready to go take this Red Devil for the very first time, and it's the night before they go take it, and they pray together as a family, and they believe in faith, and they say, can we just pray that God would heal her heart? She takes the chemo treatment, she gets the whatever it's called afterwards to see how her heart is doing, and Angelica calls Jake and says, Jake, would you believe it? They say her valve is open now. Her valve is open. And Jake will give testimony that Jesus healed her heart. And I know she's still getting her hair back. I think there's another picture. But this was them in front of the ark a couple of weeks ago. And I thought that was just a metaphor. Isn't that a metaphor? That when it rains and rains and rains, and you think you're drowning, God sends an ark to keep you afloat. God doesn't say it won't rain. Does he say that? No. He says, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. Take heart. I've overcome. You don't have to drown. You can float when you're in me. I told Jake about the shirt, and I connected Jake with Matt. Jake sent me that the other day. Let's stand to our feet.